We will be talking to Zeenat Rupawalla, who is currently doing her PhD in Bioprocess Engineering from the University of Queensland. So, Zeenat, could you share your experience of studying in Australia and in the US?
Yeah, so I graduated from Kodai in 2009. And then right after that, I went to the US for my undergrad studies. I attained a bachelor's in science and biology from University of San Francisco. It was a very diverse program in itself that it didn't only focus on biology, like life sciences, but it also gave insights into taking classes such as environmental and religion, like ethics, morality in terms of philosophy, which kind of molds you into like just not as a biologist in essence, but it kind of makes you like, more towards molds you into what you can do in the future as a person in the sense. And then after that, during my years in San Francisco, I got into cancer biology. So I was working as a cancer biologist for 2 years. And then through that process, I discovered that that wasn't the path that I wanted to take for my master's and for my PhD. I wanted to look at more environmental science. And that's when I thought about applying to Australia. And I got into Masters of Molecular Biology. And that was again specialized in climate change research specifically. And even my PhD, even though it's bioprocess engineering, that's just like an overarching part of my project, but it's more towards the field of sustainable agriculture. And it addresses one of the UN goals of zero hunger. So I'm working on these aspects at the moment, specifically driven towards climate change.
Great. So it's great that you're studying so many different subjects and subjects related to biology. So, how is the system of education different in both these countries, the US and Australia?
So in the US, it's more diverse. Like I mentioned, it gives you flexibility in terms of what classes you can take. There are certain majors and minors. For instance, your majors are directed towards biology if you're doing a bachelor's in biology, but your minors, you can actually choose any subject in any field. For instance, I took a class in criminal law and morality, which was very, very enlightening. And that's what I really liked about the US education system, even though it's a bit of a longer process. It takes 3 to 4 years to attain your bachelor's, versus in Australia, it takes you 3 years to attain your bachelor's. What really helps with the IB system in Kodai is that you can use those points, like your major, like if you take your major classes, for instance, you're taking economics and maths or whatever, you can use those points to waive 1 or 2 classes in your bachelor's, which is great. That's what I did. That's why I graduated in 3 years rather than 4 years. But in Australia, it's a bit more rigorous in terms of the fact that you have to follow the same classes as they are given to you. You can't really mix and match any of the other classes, which again, it's a personalized thing that I do like to take other classes in other fields to just gain more areas of knowledge. Australia, in terms of PhD, it is very flexible compared to the US. It takes, now it's estimated that it takes 5 to 7 years to attain your PhD, versus in Australia, you graduate like maximum of 4 years, which I think is reasonable, because after you attain your PhD, you get into the real world. And when you start applying for jobs, you want to tell them that you haven't spent 7 to 10 years of your life just pursuing one project versus you've spent 2 or 3 or 4 years of your life pursuing one project. So I think that's the difference. But having said that, the US education system does, again, focus on a lot of other things. Like in your PhD, you have to teach a couple of classes, you have to take classes as well. We don't have to do that here in Australia at all. It's just pure research focused. And yeah, that's the two main differences that I can think of.
Great. So I think Australia is quite advantageous for doing a PhD degree in. So could you tell our viewers the application and meaning of bioprocess engineering, and what was
Yeah,
your main motivation getting into it?
yeah, sure. So actually, my passion for research started in Kodaikanal when I did the extended essay in biology. And I started doing that in, again, cancer research, but I looked at plants. And in plants, it's a bit different when it comes to cancer. It decelerates the cell processes versus in humans. So that triggered an interest in cancer biology to start with. And then when I went to university in the US, I was given the opportunity to work at a cancer research lab. And it was specifically in breast cancer research. And it was actually great. Like I learned, I got a lot of hands-on experience, and I also got theoretical experience as well. I have a personal relationship with cancer as well because my aunt at that point in time passed away from cancer. And therefore, I started looking into it a lot more personally than I would have. And that led me to, after my graduation, I joined another cancer research lab. And I did a lot of back research even after just working there. I just looked at a lot of papers and worked at the infusion center as well to see, like, what happens with research is that you're in the lab, you're doing the research, you don't know how the drug that you're developing is affecting in people in real life. So I wanted the real life experience where I went to the infusion centers, talked to the patients, how is the drug affecting their livelihood? And that's when I realized that a lot of people who came by, they were like, yeah, okay, if this drug might save me for a couple of years, but it's taken away all my money for the rest of my life. It's also, even if I get cured, I go back to zero. So that's what really touched me, is that, our healthcare system, especially the US healthcare system, isn't adequate enough to give people the quality of life as well as the quality of health that they deserve. So I started looking into cancer prevention rather than cure. And that led me to question, why aren't doctors really prescribing nutrition as one of the main things in terms of any ailments? And that led me to agriculture. Our current agricultural system is very unsustainable and it's very inefficient in all means. Like it's highly reliant on fossil fuel industry. It uses 70% of fresh water that people can consume. So that's where it led me to do this project in sustainable agriculture, where I'm developing a soil additive or a biofertilizer using microalgae as a sustainable source of nutrients for the plants. So that's where I'm at right now, because by 2050, we're going to be 10 billion people in the world. Right now, we're 7.8, and we're going to need 70% more fresh water, 50% more food, and 50% more fuel. There is no way we can achieve that with the current economic system and the current way that we are, producing our food, in a sense.
It's great that you're following your passion and interest in biology. And so, what are the career opportunities in these fields of biology after you study?
So That's a great question because a lot of people venture into different fields. Me, for instance, want to get into, after my PhD, I want to get into the policy side, like the policy development specifically, because at the end of the day, researchers spend day and night in the lab trying to develop a product. But at the end of it is this panel of policymakers. If it doesn't pass through them, then your product is as good as like it's not going to be used at all. It's going to take 10 to 20 years until there's another set of policymakers come into place that who can recognize the value of your product. So that's what I want to pursue after this. Also, there are different ways that a lot of people can go. Like, I also want to work at the FAO, which is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. You can also take the United Nations route. You can also be a biologist, like you can work as a postdoctoral fellow in different labs after this. You can be a postdoc for a couple of years, and that will get you closer to being a professor if that's your goal. You can get into pharmaceutical industries. You can get into a lot of environmental, like NGOs as well. Like I know a lot of people who are doing work in the climate change space do want to get into NGOs so that they can support the people, they can educate people as well about climate change, and just talk to the local people to get more engagement. Because from what I have heard, a lot of people don't fully understand to what extent this is going to affect us, and why the pandemic at the moment is as bad as we can see it is. Yeah.
So I think biology has so many different career options after studying it. So what advice would you give students who want to study biology at a high level?
So in order to pursue a PhD, you have to be very resilient, and perseverance is key. Like if you're really passionate about it, then you need to have that perseverance. So like step by step, you need to progress towards your main goal of attaining a PhD in your desired subject. One thing I would say is that yes, it is a great field to get into if you're really passionate about it, and in fact you should be. Like that's going to be our future. It's going to be your future. It's going to be the people who are going to be graduating, and it's going to only get harder from here because in fact the climate is changing and we need more people engaged in this field. I would just tell people not to give up because there's a lot of politics involved in this field at the moment, and there's no funding. It's very difficult to just gain grants or just write papers or get a fellowship in this field. But things are coming up, and we will need to move to a sustainable system. We have to. There's no other choice. So all said and done, like people, there is scope in this field. There is a huge scope in this field. So I would recommend and advise people just to be a bit patient and follow their heart. And it's actually very rewarding. Like the yes, sometimes it is hard, like much like any other field, but I can tell you one thing, that it's extremely rewarding at the end of the day.
Great. So thank you so much, Zeenat, for your advice and your time. And I wish you all the very best in all your biology-related work in the future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And you too. Like, I hope Kodai has given you a really good platform to pursue your education further.